Alrighty, we're getting close to the end. Next up, cleaning and sanitizing. This is critical stuff because food can be easily contaminated if staff don't know how to keep facilities clean and sanitized correctly. So we'll start with the basics of cleaning and sanitizing, and then we'll take a look at dishwashing, both machine and manual dishwashing. After that, it's cleaning and sanitizing in the operation itself, so things like surface cleaning and mopping. And then we'll talk about how to put together your own cleaning program. Cleaning and sanitizing can help prevent foodborne illness outbreaks, but only if it's done correctly. Your staff may not necessarily know the difference between cleaning and sanitizing.
Cleaning removes food and other dirt from a surface. In other words, the stuff you can see. And there, it's all gone. Or is it? The answer is no, which is where sanitizing comes in. When you sanitize something, you reduce pathogens on a surface so that they are at safe levels, and that helps to keep food safe.
When you're picking and using cleaners in your operation, there are some requirements that you need to follow. First off, they need to be stable, non-corrosive, and safe to use. And they must be provided and available to employees during all hours of the operation. Now, there are quite a few different kinds of cleaners available, including detergents, degreasers, delimers, and abrasive cleaners, and each one does a different job. Go ahead and talk to your suppliers about your options. They can help you pick cleaners that meet your needs. To use cleaners correctly, be sure to follow manufacturer's instructions carefully. If they aren't used correctly, cleaners may not work and can even be dangerous. Also, don't try to use one type of cleaner in place of another unless the intended use is the same.
So that's how to use cleaners. After items have been cleaned, the next step is sanitizing. There are a couple of ways to do this using either chemicals or heat. You can sanitize items using heat by soaking them in hot water. For this method to work, the water must be at least 171 degrees Fahrenheit, 77 degrees Celsius, and the items have to be soaked for at least 30 seconds. Another way to sanitize items is to run them through a high-temperature dishwasher. If you're using chemicals for sanitizing, you have a few different options. Tableware, utensils, and equipment can be sanitized by soaking them in a chemical sanitizing solution. Or you can rinse, swab, or spray them with sanitizing solution.
Now, there are three common types of chemical sanitizers: chlorine, iodine, and quaternary ammonium compounds, or quats. In some cases, you can use detergent sanitizer blends to sanitize. Operations that have two-compartment sinks like to use these. If you use a detergent sanitizer blend, use it once to clean, then use it a second time to sanitize. Chemical sanitizers are regulated by state and federal environmental protection agencies. Whichever sanitizer you use, keep in mind that it must be provided and made available to employees during all hours of operation.
Here's a question for you. What makes a sanitizer solution effective? Okay, it was kind of a trick question. Water temperature matters, but so do all of the others. Let's take a closer look. There are several factors that influence the effectiveness of chemical sanitizers. The most critical include concentration, temperature, contact time, water hardness, and pH. It doesn't matter whether you're using sanitizer on equipment surfaces or during dishwashing, the steps are the same. Make sure the water is the correct temperature according to the manufacturer's directions. A thermometer will help. Sanitizer solution is a mix of chemical sanitizer and water. And the concentration of this mix, the amount of sanitizer to water, is critical. So, be sure to add the correct amount of sanitizer to make it the right strength. Too weak, and it won't sanitize. And too much sanitizer may make the solution too strong and unsafe. It can leave a bad taste on items and even corrode metal. This is definitely not what you want. To prevent these problems, use a test kit to check the sanitizer's strength. These kits are usually available from the chemical manufacturer or supplier. Make sure they're available at all times and easily accessible to employees. Sanitizer concentration is measured in parts per million, or ppm. The test kit can tell you when you've got it right. Things like food bits, leftover detergent, and even hard water can reduce the solution's effectiveness. So, change the solution when it looks dirty or if the concentration is low. And check concentration often. Let's see if all of that stuck. Can water hardness affect sanitizer effectiveness? Yes, it sure can. Sanitizer works. The pH of your water can also have an impact on your sanitizer effectiveness. Find out what your water hardness and water pH are from your municipality and then work with your supplier. They can help you figure out the right amount of sanitizer to use for your water. Another question. How long should items be in contact with the sanitizer solution in order for it to work correctly? That's right. For a sanitizer solution to kill pathogens, it must make contact with the object being sanitized for a specific amount of time. This is called contact time, and the amount of time depends on a few different factors. If you're using chlorine as a sanitizer with water that is 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, or higher, you need to make sure your water pH is 10 or lower and your water hardness meets your manufacturer's recommendations. Sanitizer concentration should be between 50 and 99 parts per million, and you need a contact time of 7 seconds or greater. But what if you want to use chlorine with water that's a little cooler, say 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 degrees Celsius, or higher? No problem. Just make sure your water pH is 8 or lower, water hardness meets manufacturer's recommendations, sanitizer concentration is 50 to 99 parts per million, and use a contact time of at least 7 seconds. Another sanitizer option with that 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 degrees Celsius water is quartz. Ensure that the water pH is within the manufacturer's recommendations and the water hardness is 500 ppm or lower, or whatever your manufacturer recommends. The concentration will depend on the manufacturer's recommendation, and the contact time is a bit longer, 30 seconds. And finally, if you want to use even cooler water, then iodine works at 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. Water pH should be 5 or lower, or as per the manufacturer's recommendation, and water hardness should meet the manufacturer's recommendation. Keep your sanitizer concentration between 12.5 and 25 ppm and a contact time of at least 30 seconds. Every place is a little different, and your staff are going to have to know how and when to clean and sanitize items and surfaces in your operation.
Not all surfaces are handled the same way. The ones that don't touch food only need to be cleaned and rinsed. Things like floors, walls, storage shelves, and garbage containers. Doing this prevents dust, dirt, and food residue from building up, and customers from being disgusted every time they walk by.
Ew.
Surfaces that do touch food must be cleaned, rinsed, and sanitized. Items in this group include things like knives, stock pots, and cutting boards.
There are 5 steps to cleaning and sanitizing a surface. Step 1 is to scrape or remove any bits of food off the surface. Use the right cleaning tool for this, like a nylon brush or pad or a cloth towel. Step 2 is no surprise. Wash the surface. Prepare your cleaning solution with an approved cleaner and use the right tool, like a cloth towel. For step 3, it's time to rinse the surface. Use clean water and the right tool. A cloth towel can work for this too. Step 4 is to sanitize. It's important to use the correct sanitizing solution and make sure that it's mixed to the correct concentration per the manufacturer's recommendation. As with everything else, use the correct tool. In this case, that would be something like a cloth towel. And make sure that the entire surface has come in contact with the sanitizing solution. Step 5 is the easiest. Let the surface air dry. Now, if you find surfaces in your operation that haven't been cleaned and sanitized correctly, take corrective action immediately. That's cleaning in 5 easy steps. Let's watch an employee take a shot at cleaning a prep table and see how he does.
Watch this video and see if the employee cleans and sanitizes the prep table correctly. Did he do it right? You're right. He didn't rinse the table before sanitizing it, and he also wiped it dry instead of letting it air dry.
Knowing how to clean and sanitize is critical, but knowing when it needs to be done is just as important. Of course, food contact surfaces need to be cleaned and sanitized when you're done using them, but when else do you need to do it?
These employees are going to ask you whether or not they need to clean and sanitize something. Click yes if they do, or no if they don't. Here's the first one.
I just finished trimming a roast and want to use the same knife and cutting board to fillet fish. Should I clean and sanitize them first?
Right you are. Food contact surfaces need to be cleaned before working with a different type of food. Because this person is switching from meat to fish, it's time to clean and sanitize. And they'd also have to do this if they were switching between different raw TCS fruits and vegetables, such as switching between cutting melons and leafy greens.
I just walked away to speak with my manager and then returned to chopping lettuce. Should I clean and sanitize the knife and cutting board?
Nice catch! Because this person was interrupted during a task, the knife and cutting board could have been contaminated. To be safe, they should be cleaned and sanitized before continuing. Last one. Let's listen.
I've been prepping melons with the same knife and cutting board for over an hour. Should I clean and sanitize them?
Right. They don't need to clean it yet. If you're performing the same task, you can use the same equipment for up to 4 hours without cleaning and sanitizing it, as long as it's been in constant use. But once you hit that 4-hour mark, it's time.
Stationary equipment like mixers and slicers have their own procedures for cleaning and sanitizing. Usually the equipment manufacturer will provide instructions on how to do this. Generally speaking, it will go something like this. When you're cleaning and sanitizing stationary equipment like a slicer, the first step is to unplug the equipment. Trust me when I say you don't want a slicer turning on while you're trying to clean it. Ouch! Once it's unplugged, take off the parts that can be removed. You can either wash, rinse, and sanitize these parts by hand, or you can run them through a dishwasher if allowed. Now for the parts that can't be removed. First, scrape or remove food from the surfaces. Then, wash the equipment with an improved cleaner and the right tool like a nylon brush or pad or a cloth towel. Then rinse the equipment surfaces with clean water. Once again, use a cloth towel or other correct tool. After rinsing, go ahead and sanitize the surfaces. Make sure the sanitizer solution is the correct concentration and that it comes in contact with each surface. Then you just let everything dry. Final step, put it all back together. And fingers crossed that you were paying attention when you took the pieces apart. Some clean-in-place equipment is designed to have cleaning and sanitizing solutions pumped through it. An example would be something like a soft-serve yogurt machine. Because this kind of equipment is often used to hold and dispense TCS food, it must be cleaned and sanitized every day unless otherwise indicated by the manufacturer. Dishwashing. There are a few ways to do it. Smaller things like tableware and utensils are often cleaned and sanitized in a dishwashing machine. And bigger things like pots and pans might be cleaned by hand in a 3-compartment sink. But however you do it, there are some specific practices to follow to make sure it's done correctly. And after everything's been cleaned and sanitized, it needs to be stored correctly to protect it from contamination. Let's see if you already know some of this. What is the required final rinse temperature for a dishwashing machine? Yeah, for some machines, 180 degrees Fahrenheit, 82 degrees Celsius is the right temperature for the final rinse. Depends on the machine. Let me explain. Dishwashing machines sanitize by using either hot water or a chemical solution. High-temperature machines use hot water to clean and sanitize. If the water isn't hot enough, then items won't be sanitized. But extremely hot water can also bake food onto the items. In a high-temperature machine, the temperature of the final sanitizing rinse must be at least 180 degrees Fahrenheit, 82 degrees Celsius. Or, if you have a stationary rack single-temperature machine, it must be at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 degrees Celsius. For either kind of machine, the dishwasher has to have a built-in temperature gauge that measures the water temperature at the manifold where the water sprays into the tank. Now, chemical sanitizing machines can clean and sanitize at much lower temperatures. Follow the manufacturer's guidelines for these. Every dishwashing machine is a little different, so follow the manufacturer's guidelines for your machine and keep it in good repair. Here's an overview of how to use these machines.
Even though you're using dishwashers to clean other items, you still have to clean and maintain them as often as necessary, checking at least once per day. Keep spray nozzles clear of food and other objects, and fill tanks with clean water as needed. Also, make sure detergent and sanitizer dispensers are filled, and remove mineral deposits from the machine when needed. If you're satisfied the machine is in good shape, you're ready to do some dishes. First, scrape, rinse, or soak the items you'll be washing. Items with dried-on food, like flatware, should be pre-soaked. Make sure that your staff never overload dish racks like someone did here, and always use the correct rack for the items you're washing, like glass racks for glasses. Finally, load each rack correctly to ensure that the water spray will reach all surfaces. Let everything air dry on a clean and sanitized surface. Always let items air dry and make sure they are completely dry before stacking or storing them. Monitor the machines while they're in use. Check water temperature, pressure, and sanitizer levels, and take appropriate corrective action if necessary. Operations that use high-temperature dishwashing machines need to provide staff with an easy and quick way to measure surface temperatures of the items being sanitized. And the method used must provide an irreversible record of the highest temperature reached during the sanitizing rinse. This ensures that the dishwasher can reach the correct sanitizing temperatures during operation. There are a few ways to do this. Maximum registering thermometers or heat-sensitive tape are good tools for checking temperatures.
A lot of operations use a 3-compartment sink to wash big items like pots and pans. The first step is setting up the sinks. You may already know how to do this.
Let's get this 3-compartment sink set up. Starting with the items on the left, drag each item to the correct sink to set it up. Yep, the cleaning tools aren't for one specific sink, but should be used to clean and sanitize each sink and drain board before you start washing dishes. That's always the first step. That's right. The first sink should be filled with detergent and water that's at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 43 degrees Celsius. Follow the manufacturer's recommendations. You got it. The second sink should only be filled with clean water to rinse things off. Or, if you spray rinse items, you could leave the sink empty. Nailed it. The third and final sink needs water and the correct amount of sanitizer, so be sure to check the sanitizer's strength and follow the manufacturer's recommendations. As an alternative, you could use hot water to sanitize. Either way, make sure that your sink area has a clock with a second hand, so food handlers know how long items have been in the sanitizer. Nice job setting up the sink. Now try your hand at washing this plate correctly by dragging it through each step in the cleaning and sanitizing process in order. To get you started, here's a hint. You're going to want to scrape that plate before you stick it in the sink. Well done. Lots of people miss this, but the first thing to do is rinse, scrape, or soak the plate before washing it. Some places soak the plate in the first sink. If this is done, change the solution when the food bits start to build up or the suds are gone. Okay, what's the next step? Right. Next comes washing, and you always wash items in the first sink. Use a brush, cloth towel, or nylon scrub pad to loosen the dirt. And be sure to change the water and detergent when the suds are gone or the water is dirty. What's next? Yes, you're on a roll. After washing comes rinsing, and after the first sink comes the second sink. You can dip them in the water or spray rinse them. Just make sure to remove all traces of food and detergent. And, tell me if this sounds familiar, change the rinse water when it becomes dirty or full of suds. Next. Awesome. Scrape, then wash, then rinse, then sanitize. That's what the third sink is for. Soak them in a sanitizer solution for the correct length of time and change the sanitizing solution when the water temperature or sanitizer concentration falls below requirements. And remember that you never want to rinse items after sanitizing, because this could contaminate the surfaces. What's last? That's right, air drying. Never use a towel to dry items, because it could contaminate them. Place items upside down on a clean and sanitized surface so they will drain. Nice work.
After tableware and utensils have been cleaned, it's important to store them correctly to protect the items from contamination. It's up to you to make sure that your staff know this.
Take a look at these examples and see if everything's been stored correctly. What about this one? Have these cutting boards been stored safely? You caught it. Someone made a mistake here. Those cutting boards are on the floor. Tableware, utensils, and equipment that touch food must be stored at least 6 inches, 15 centimeters off the floor. This will protect them from dirt and moisture. Try this one. Look okay? You're right. Someone made a mistake with these cups. Glasses and cups should be stored upside down on a clean and sanitized surface. What about this one? Everything look good? Correct. Flatware should be stored with the handles up so people can grab it by the handle and avoid touching the food contact surface. This will help prevent the transfer of pathogens like norovirus.
So, what else can you do to keep items safe? Well, it obviously doesn't make any sense to go through the effort of cleaning and sanitizing all of this stuff if it then gets parked on a contaminated surface. So make sure that staff know to clean and sanitize shelves and drawers before storing clean items in them. It's the same story with trays and carts that are used to carry clean tableware and utensils. Check them daily and clean them as often as necessary. Also, keep the food contact surfaces of stationary equipment covered until that equipment is ready for use. We've looked at cleaning and sanitizing utensils and equipment that touches food. What about the rest of the operation? Like I said earlier, non-food contact surfaces like floors, walls, and restrooms may not need to be sanitized, but they still need regular cleaning. It prevents dust, dirt, and food residue from building up, which can prevent the growth of pathogens and prevent pests. Let's start with one of the most basic cleaning tools there is, wiping cloths. They're used in operations for things like wiping up food spills and to wipe down equipment surfaces. Now, this is important for your staff to know. They should never use cloths that are meant for wiping food spills for any other purpose. There are a couple of different kinds of cloths, wet cloths and dry cloths. Store wet wiping cloths used for wiping counters and other equipment surfaces in a sanitizer solution between uses. And of course, staff should change the solution when it no longer meets requirements for the sanitizer being used. Wet cloths that come in contact with raw meat, fish, and poultry have to be kept separate from cloths used for other purposes. Now, dry wiping cloths that will be used to wipe food spills from tableware, such as from a plate during service, must be kept dry while in use. And these dry cloths must not contain food debris or be visibly dirty during use. There are some special circumstances that require immediate cleaning. Like if someone gets sick in your operation. It's not pleasant to talk about, but it is important. Let's say a guest vomits in the front of the house. Could that put other guests and staff at risk for norovirus? You bet it could. Vomit and also diarrhea can carry norovirus. That's one reason why there are special cleanup considerations for these substances.
Whether it's in the front of the house or the back of the house, to prevent the spread of highly contagious norovirus, any vomit or diarrhea that contacts surfaces in the operation must be cleaned up correctly. This can prevent food and surfaces from becoming contaminated. It will also keep others from becoming sick. So, operations must have written procedures for cleaning up vomit and diarrhea. These procedures must address specific actions that employees need to take in order to minimize contamination and exposure to food, surfaces, and people. And it's critical that employees be trained on these procedures.
Okay, time to talk about something pretty straightforward. Cleaning tools and supplies and how to store them. Let your staff know that this is actually pretty important because these items can contaminate food and surfaces if they aren't used and stored correctly.
Here we go. Take a look at this picture. Any problems here? Yes, there's a problem. It looks like someone stored a mop with food, and that could contaminate the food.
Cleaning tools and chemicals should be stored so that they don't contaminate food and equipment. It's a best practice to store them in a designated area away from food. To keep everything safe, make sure that your storage area has good lighting so staff can see chemicals easily. And make sure that there are plenty of hooks for mops, brooms, and any other cleaning tools. You'll also want a utility sink for filling buckets and washing the cleaning tools, and a floor drain for dumping dirty water. Make sure that everything is stored in a way that makes it easy to clean the storage area.
Here's another question. See anything wrong here? You know it. This person is dumping a mop bucket in a toilet, and that can contaminate the equipment. Staff should never dump mop water or other liquid waste into toilets or urinals. Cleaning equipment can also cause contamination when employees clean mops, brushes, or other tools in the wrong sink. So make sure your staff know not to do this in sinks for hand washing, food prep, or dishwashing. Mops, brooms, and brushes need to be air dried. Place them in a position to air dry overnight where they won't dirty walls, equipment, or supplies. And staff should pay similar attention to buckets. Clean and rinse them. Let them air dry and then go ahead and store them with the other tools. If you see that chemicals or cleaning tools have not been used or stored correctly, take corrective action immediately.
It's probably no surprise to hear that some of the chemicals used in the operation can be hazardous, especially if they're used or stored incorrectly. One of the biggest dangers is cross-contamination. To keep everything nice and safe, make sure that your operation only uses chemicals that are approved for use in a food service operation. And follow some basic guidelines when handling them. First off, you never want to keep chemicals that aren't required to operate or maintain the establishment. And before you do use any chemicals, be sure to always remove or cover items that could become contaminated. An example would be covering the fryer when cleaning the hood. Then, when you're done using chemicals, make sure to clean and sanitize equipment and utensils. And of course, always follow the law and manufacturer's directions when using chemicals. Some operations designate specific areas for storing chemicals, but whether or not this is done, chemicals must be kept separate from food, equipment, utensils, and linens. There are a couple of ways you could do this. You can use spacing and keep the chemicals away from other items, or you can partition off chemicals from other items stored in the same area. But either way, make sure that chemicals are always stored below food, equipment, utensils, and linens. Let your staff know that chemicals need to be stored in their original containers. The container should have a manufacturer's label, and that label must include the directions for use and be clear enough to read. If chemicals are transferred to a new working container, like filling up a spray bottle with sanitizer, then the label on that container needs to list the common name of the chemical. We're almost through. It's time to put it all together by developing a cleaning program and making a master cleaning schedule.
To develop an effective cleaning program for your operation, you're going to want to focus on 3 things. First, create a master cleaning schedule. Second, train your staff to follow it. And third, monitor the program to make sure it works.
Every master cleaning schedule should cover the basics. The first is obvious. List what should be cleaned. Include both food contact and non-food contact surfaces. You can list all of the cleaning jobs in one area, or you can list the jobs in the order that they should be done. Your call. Then figure out who should clean what. Assign each task to a specific individual. Also, determine when it should be cleaned. Staff should clean and sanitize as needed, so schedule major cleaning when food will not be contaminated or service will not be affected. And schedule work shifts to allow enough time. Finally, write down how everything should be cleaned. You want to make sure that you have clear, written procedures for cleaning. Go ahead and list cleaning tools and chemicals by name. Of course, you want to follow the manufacturer's directions when cleaning equipment. And you should post the cleaning instructions near the item to be cleaned. Once you've got everything documented, schedule some time for training. Work with small groups or conduct your training by area. And after everything is in place, monitor the program and see if everything is working the way it should. Supervise daily cleaning routines and check all cleaning tasks against the master cleaning schedule every day. Don't be afraid to change the master schedule as needed. You may need to account for things like a change in menu, procedures, or equipment. And finally, don't forget to ask staff for input on the program. And that's it. We are so close to being done. All that's left are the questions.
What is the correct way to clean and sanitize a prep table? You know it. This is the correct process for cleaning and sanitizing. Nice. What is sanitizing? Yes, absolutely. Sanitizing means reducing pathogens to safe levels. What must staff do to make sure that sanitizing solution has been made correctly? You are correct. Staff should use a test kit to make sure that the sanitizer solution has been made correctly. At a minimum, how often should dishwashing machines be checked for cleanliness? That's right. Dishwashing machines should be cleaned as often as needed, and you want to check them at least once a day. What is the correct way to store a mop between uses? You got it. Mops and other cleaning tools should be hung up on hooks so they can dry. The first two steps in developing a cleaning program are creating a master cleaning schedule and training staff to follow it. What is the third step? That's absolutely correct. The last step is to monitor the program to make sure it's working. Fantastic work.